Life can be so challenging. Where can you go to get divine clarification, help, and advice? Well, may I introduce Natasha Venter, medium, coach, and direct connection to your guides and angels. Through her podcast, Life Clarifications, Natasha will help you navigate through and create your life's destiny. My name is Kevin McDonald, co-host of this podcast, and I've seen her work and know that through her incredible talent, you can be changed forever. So let's start another episode of Life Clarifications with Natasha. And I can see you and all that stuff. Now, there we go.
There we are. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
And welcome.
Surprise! Here you are.
Pop.
Yep. So, Natasha, how are you? How was your week? We talked a little bit about it. We don't need to go there, but we can go somewhere else if you'd like.
Yeah, it's just, I think this is the week where it's like I told someone in my day job that we kind of were getting into an arguments and trying to straighten things out, that, going through the sifter of life is never easy. And this is kind of lead us into what Sue, who is our guest. Sue is someone who, through my mediumship and through my intuitive work, Sue and I come together through, I think it was a fair. And then that led us to being, we've actually become really special friends through our, Veronica, who's been on here, she just told me it's been 10 years since we've been working together. And I think Sue and I have been working together pretty close to the same amount of years. And when we have somebody who is in our lives this much, many times, like Veronica and Sue, they've gone through so much growth spiritually that they've become very magical themselves. And so Sue was already magical. She's already done a lot of work. She's already come through so much in her life and has worked through so much with, I think, if I can name your son. Can I name your son?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Carson was in second grade when we met?
I remember it was 2011. So he would have been 8, so third grade, second or third grade.
Mm-hmm.
So he's 18.
Yes, he just turned 18. So with that, and that's the same time that I met with Veronica. Boy, isn't that a synchronicity? Two magical people in my life. So with that as we're working through things, that many times our spiritual growth brings us to a point where, like Sue, can trust and voice her knowings, like I've been voicing mine, to support people in their path. And I know our conversations when we get together, a lot of times we have to have like almost 20 minutes, half hour just to conversate before we go into a session. Mm-hmm. Because it's that personal work that we're doing. And I'm so grateful that Sue has been able to be on our show so that we can get her perspective on how to navigate through things. Because I know that I have my story and she's got her story. And we were talking about how she kind of had a great topic that I know that I've danced into, but I think it's good that we put our throw our dart into that conversation full force. So what was the conversation you were thinking that we should have, Sue?
I was just thinking about talking about sort of my personal evolution. Because I grew up in a family, I was not intuitive the way you are. I didn't remember back to being born and this kind of thing. My growing up was pretty typical in a lot of ways. And the biggest difference was I had a mom who was mentally ill, but I didn't know it until probably about 10th grade, when she, for the first time, to my awareness, lost touch with reality and had to be hospitalized. And so when you grow up with a mother that's not well, whatever her, she's normal, whatever, that's your normal, if you know what I mean. because like her moods would cycle up, cycle down. And for me, that was normal. And on the other side, I had dad who did not have any mental illness, and he was always very steady and stable. So I was always daddy's little girl. But along the way, like a lot of people, I grew up with kind of my self-talk. You know how everybody has their self-talk. And for me, my self-talk always was around weight, because my mom was always obsessed about her weight. And now she was not overweight. She was beautiful. She was perfect. But she was always on a diet. So as soon as I turned 12 or 13, oh, that's what you do. You go on a diet. So I had this tape playing in my head that I'm too heavy, I'm too fat, and started the cycle of yo-yo dieting. And the funny thing about that is when I finally reached a point in my life where I literally could not diet anymore, like I would try, and my willpower is just completely gone. I was considering the extreme of gastric bypass surgery, and something inside me said, you know, I can do the surgery and I might be forced to eat less and lose weight, but that won't address why, that inner reason why I have been eating more than my body needs. And I don't even remember where I saw this, but I saw this somewhere, probably like the Oprah show or something, about using hypnosis to lose weight.
Yeah.
And I found a local hypnotherapist. And at this time, I'll have to backtrack just a little bit. I had a 14-year career on boats and ships. So I was a merchant mariner, and I worked on smaller boats. And when that career was winding down, because I wanted to get married and have kids and all that, I found myself living up here in the North Puget Sound area, and I found a local hypnotherapist and said, "Hey, could you help me with this weight loss thing?" And she said, "I would love to. I've never really done that particularly with hypnosis. That wasn't her specific training. But she had enough tools, and we worked together. And what was amazing was about maybe 4 or 5 sessions in, one day she said, "Connect with your higher self." And I said, "What is that? I have no idea what you just asked me to do. Not a clue." And she started describing, well, it's this part of yourself that's connected to the broader universe. It has all the answers for you. And I don't even remember exactly how she described it. But as soon as something in me went, oh, I get it, I started having an experience. I was no longer imagining this or imagining that. I was just riding this experience, which was amazing. And it just played out like a little movie in my head. And I felt all these emotions and feelings, from amazing power to compassion and love like you can't even imagine. And after that experience, I was like, wow, that is so cool. What was that? And it took me another probably 11 years to realize that was what you call a metaphysical experience. But I lost some weight with her, and then life went on. And a number of years later, I had started to gain some back. And I thought, I want to try doing that again. At this point, I had bought a house, got married, had a kid, stress, and worked with another gal. And unfortunately, I had signed up to work with her through one of these things where it's pay one fee, work with one of our practitioners until your issue is solved. And the person who owned all of that, he got divorced and it all folded. So all of a sudden she won't see me anymore because she's not getting paid. However, while I was seeing her, during one session, once again, I was sitting in the chair and she says, do you want to go back to your happy place that we've created? Like this image of whatever it was, a lagoon with palm trees where you're floating in the water, just And she's like, or would you like to create a new happy place? And all of a sudden I was transported. I didn't imagine anything. I was just on this ride, and I was on the side of a mountain in a whiteout. I could see nothing but snow. It was like a blizzard. And all of a sudden, behind me, there was this really tall being standing just above my head and enveloped my body with these massive white wings. And when I looked down at my body, it was clear, like clear plastic. And there was snow swirling and swirling and swirling inside of me. And it was purifying me. It was cleansing me. And I just stood there and I realized it was an angel behind me. And this angel was healing me. And what it did was it healed me of all shame in my life. And so, of course, with something that intense amount of love, I was just crying and crying. And by the time I came out of that, I was a changed person. I had dumped every bit of shame I ever felt in my life. And honestly, I've never felt it since. So since I couldn't work with that gal anymore, and she basically dumped me, I waited a few years and started working with another fellow. And in the way he worked, he would take me back in time to the initiation of a feeling that I was medicating with food. And his process was a little different than other people, because instead of just taking you back one time and stopping, and I don't know if Regan Forster has ever seen this method, but you go back, you ask a few short questions. And one of the questions is, have you felt this feeling before, or is it brand new? And if it's not brand new, they regress you immediately again. And they keep doing that over and over and over until you reach the point of, oh, this feeling's brand new. And one day when he did that with me, I regressed back to being in the womb. And then before I was in the womb, when I was in this like waiting room, waiting to be born. And then I regressed back again to being in this little room with a guide planning my life. Excuse me. And I was just like flabbergasted, because I never knew that we plan our lives. Excuse me.
Yep, some of us plan better than others, but we all do the planning. That's right.
Well, I don't really think that we plan better than others. I think once we get here, that our life through the humanness either becomes better or more troublesome. And it depends on how we walk through it. Depends on if we can be enlightened from it or we become the victim of it.
And there's some people that would say that their life is playing out exactly how they planned it, which I find hard to believe if it's a difficult life. But it makes sense that would be true. Anyway, Susan, go ahead. By the way, I wanted to thank you, Susan Snyder, for having the intestinal fortitude to come on and talk about this today.
Oh, thanks. It's my first time, so I'm a little bit nervous and my mouth's going a little dry, but I got some water.
So you're doing just fine. Fine.
Yes. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. So I had, and then with that same fellow, I had actually a total of 3 times where we were looking at a feeling that would come up in my life, and I would turn to food to quiet that feeling. So it was usually like frustration, boredom. A lot of times it was boredom or frustration. And I would just run to nibble to quiet that feeling. And it worked temporarily. And 3 times I went back and saw, oh, this has to do with something that I set up for my life. And one of the issues I'll talk about, because I think it's pertinent to anybody who's a parent. When my son began to struggle in school, which was about first and second grade, he began to struggle. I started getting really frustrated and worried as a parent because he wasn't learning to read with his peers and he couldn't spell for nothing. And I never had that issue in school. So I was very concerned and worried, didn't know what was happening. And that would just amp me up as a parent because I'm like, come on, kid, you can do this. What's going on here? And later found out he has dyslexia, but that's another story.
And it's a big one.
Yes. But so when we regressed, the lesson that came up was, and I've actually since this time seen this in other like spiritual writings. The lesson that came up was we each have our own individual path in life to walk. You cannot walk another person's path for them. You can help them, you can support them, you can love them, but they have to literally put one foot in front of the other. And as soon as I understood that, I was able to let go of some of this like control that I was trying to exert over my child and go, okay, I can only control him or help him so much as a parent. So I think if every parent were to have that experience, especially when they have a child who's struggling in any way, shape, or form, it really makes a difference. I know it made a difference for me. But I honestly didn't. So with all these amazing metaphysical things happening, and each time I actually would have some success with weight loss. And some of it was more long lasting than others. And when my son was also struggling with being able to fall asleep at night and stay asleep, because he's a very, very, very sensitive person. And he would often have very disturbed sleep. Either he would have night terrors or I don't know what else going on. And plus, I think his brain just doesn't sync with the rising and setting of the sun necessarily the way most people's do. But I found out about this thing called Reiki, and I connected with another mom who said, oh yeah, my son's like your son. I use Reiki on him and it helps him fall asleep. And I did not even know what Reiki was. Never heard of it. I'm like, fine. Don't know what this thing is, but I'm going to learn it so my kid will sleep because I'm exhausted. What I didn't know is, yes.
So could you explain what, for those that may not know what Reiki is, could you explain what Reiki is?
I absolutely will, because I had to find out.
Of course you did. You can't do it if you don't know it. Then find it out. And stuff.
I was fortunate to find a one-day class locally, and what Reiki is some people describe it as a person acts like a hollow bone for the healing energy of the universe. And what I mean by that is a master Reiki practitioner will do some energy work on you to sort of open you up. And you sort of bring universal healing energy in, down through your head, through your body, out your hands, and you act as a sender of this energy. And it helps people heal. That's pretty much the basics of it. So my son would lay in bed, and I would just lay my hands over his body, wherever, and just intend to send him this energy. And it would somehow help him relax and shut his busy mind down, and he could fall asleep. So if you ever are stressed out and you need to relax, if you get a Reiki session, chances are very good that by the end of it, you'll be asleep. But it is a healing modality. And what I didn't realize is when you become attuned to Reiki, it changes you as a person energetically, like something changes. Because within a week or two of that class, I experienced a spiritual awakening that I didn't even, I'm not a person who is a spiritual seeker. I didn't even know what that was when it happened. Never heard the term, didn't know anything about it. And all of a sudden, I had this intense desire to know everything about energy healing. It was like this all-consuming desire that just came over me. And next thing you know, I'm diving into books, diving into videos, taking classes, taking workshops. And that's where I also got interested in people with clairvoyant abilities like Natasha and mediumship abilities. And we're fortunate that I'm not too far from Bellingham, which is north of us. And Bellingham is a little bit of a hotbed of places to learn about metaphysical things. Lots of people up in the area there that could do readings and teach. And I found a center where I could take classes and learn how to use clairvoyance and learn how to connect with spirit and this kind of thing, which anybody can learn.
What did your friends and family think as you went down this path? Because things changed for you, and other people may or may not have recognized what that change was, but I'm sure that they saw something different in you.
Well, let me think. Well, first of all, I did not grow up in this area. So most of my friends are on the East Coast that I grew up with or were. So they didn't really see it. My parents and my brothers, they didn't really, they didn't say much. They probably were just kind of going, that's interesting. But the cool thing is I started sending my folks books about like near-death experiences and this kind of thing. Because as this was happening, my folks were getting quite elderly. And my dad in particular, who had been living with cancer for about 25 years, his body was really starting to say it's time to go at this point. So, and he was scared of death. He was absolutely terrified of death. So I was able to send him some things to say, hey, when you die, there's more. There's more. You're not just lights out, overdone, because that's what he was terrified of. And so having this new awareness hopefully helped at least my dad before he passed. And what's funny is when he actually passed, I was in the middle of a class called Communicating with Spirit, which was just like a 6-session class. And about a day or two after he passed, I was outside and I thought, I wonder if I can connect to Dad now that he's on the other side. And I'm like, I don't know. Why not give it a try? What the heck? So I just got really quiet. I moved my focus down into my heart. And I was like, hey, Dad, are you there? And in my mind, I heard, woohoo, I'm free. And I was just so comforted by hearing that. And then, of course, I'm like, was that real? Did I make that up? Did I imagine it? Because when you're learning this stuff, there's a lot of that. And I checked with a few trusted intuitive friends, and they were like, oh, yeah, that was real. You connected. So that was really amazing. But I just look back and laugh and go, okay, I sort of consider myself this white bread girl from a generic suburban town, East Coast, very traditional, a little conservative, not particularly religious, kind of the church and Easter person going to church. Christmas and Easter person going to church. And I had a spiritual awakening. What the? And after that happened, both my parents passed in 2012. And in 2013, I found another hypnotherapist to work with. But this time, this woman, she took her spiritual practice and integrated it into her hypnosis work. And for the first time, I had this blend of hypnosis that was amazing. And when I started working with her, it was just, it was amazing. It was incredible. I would address all kinds of things, from not only just issues around food, but things like self-esteem, self-empowerment, personal boundaries, all these kind of things that you might work on talking to a therapist. But instead of talking about them for like 10 years, you'd have one session and all of a sudden you were a changed person, which was the power of that modality is just mind-boggling. And what really surprised me was when I would go back in time and look at some of these feelings, I would see dynamics between like me and my mom when I was 2 years old. And I don't remember my childhood, and I'm seeing her getting very upset with me when I was 2, except with my mom, because she was not mentally stable, her getting very upset at a toddler came out as just viciously attacking me verbally, just assaulting me. And that created some deep wounds inside. And I literally saw that food became my medicine when I'm around 2 or even younger. Like I could see how it saved my life because it quieted that emotional pain. And so that became my tool that I used throughout my life, which blew my mind. Excuse me. It blew my mind because a lot of times if you go see like a doctor or nutritionist and you're heavy, they say, well, follow this diet, do some exercise, and you'll be fine. But I was able to see that this dynamic was set up when I was so young that I couldn't remember it. And it was set up to save my life. So when you're fighting that, you have to do healing work, and you have to go deep, and you have to go inside. And I did a lot of that. And not only was I able to heal a lot of the relationship pain between me and my mom, but a few years ago, I literally healed so much that I was able to release what felt like the last of that pain from our relationship. So now when I think about her and when I think about us, I can remember specific events without the emotional tie, unless it was a love tie. So the wonderful thing about healing is you can discharge emotional charge from an event, and just what stays with you is the love from the relationship, which is quite amazing.
Yeah, and doing that work, it's amazing how we all come into this new knowing of who we are. And I personally didn't have to go through the hypnosis part of it because of doing other work. But I kind of went through, like after my mom, I went through a massage therapist who did kind of some cranial sacral work, which was kind of that rebirthing process. And it was somebody else guiding. And that's the thing that a lot of us have this stigma about going to someone else, counselor, hypnosis, someone who can be a life, coach or whatever you want to call them, to help through these processes. And I can tell you that a lot of us right now are digging up a lot of this dirt. I'm going to call it dirt of our past, because once we can clear out the dirt and get it to be a nice flower bed, it's amazing what can grow. But a lot of us don't want to weed that part of us or look into that part of ourselves to get to who we are. And I just want to say congratulations, Sue, because doing that work, even though, it may not give you a huge ripple effect in the people that surround you, because of the world that you're in right now, that, it's pretty close knit. But yet at the same time, though, me being a witness of you for the last 10 years has been pretty magical. You have, you're almost getting to that point where it's like, it doesn't matter what happens outside of you, because it's what happens inside of you. And I'm grateful for that. And I know that lately that you have, I have a fly that's flies in me. I have a fly that bounced around, and they communicate with me too. That when since you don't have a hypnosis person, we've done some of the work ourselves through doing some kind of hypnosis meditations, and I'm seeing magic coming through you. It's just, my hands,
Thanks. Well, one of the things I've learned that I didn't realize, and a lot of people don't realize, is when you feel any kind of emotion that's uncomfortable, like, for instance, you get mad, your first reaction is, you made me mad, or that thing made me mad, like road rage or whatever. The traffic made me mad. There's this natural inclination in people to look at life as that outside of you made me feel this way. And what I learned is that's what I call the child's eye view of life. And the truth, my truth now is, something triggered my anger that is inside of me. And the cool thing about doing healing work is I can literally find out what that trigger is inside of me, and I can dissolve it completely. And of course, the fun thing is, as you heal one trigger and dissolve it, then you get to heal another trigger and dissolve it, and you get to heal another one. But when I was working with the gal who had blended spirituality into her hypnosis, I would literally, in sessions, I would be facing my inner child. I literally saw her as me at whatever age. It could be 2, 3, 6, 12. Usually the little ones were scared and upset, and the 12-year-old was always pissed off. Yeah. But you literally meet these parts of you or aspects of you face to face, and you have conversations with them. You look through their eyes to see, how are you feeling? What's happening? And they speak. And then you come in as your wise adult self and say, oh, you poor thing, I'm so sorry. And I love you. And I fully and wholly accept you. And you have you have a back and forth conversation. And what happens is, eventually the inner child, the way I see it or saw it, is she gets happy and just completely drops what she was holding on to for the last whatever years. And with that, the trigger becomes dissolved. And working with a spiritual hypnotherapist, I saw that inner child know herself as perfect and divine and very sparkly. And what's incredible is, as you shift the perception of your inner child, your perception of yourself changes. Because after a while, all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, I'm divine. And I know myself as part of this spiritual energy, this universal life force energy that is us. It's our life force, literally. It's like we are made of it. And I never saw that coming. Never.
Susan, let me ask you, and by the way, Natasha, is that better now?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Couple questions I have for you. You've been working at this for a little over 10 years with our friend Natasha, and you've accomplished a lot. You've come and you've had some awakenings, and you've had some real interesting moments that a lot of people don't have, that a lot of people that are not seeking it. You've been seeking it. Where is it going? Where do you want it to go? What's next?
I was going to say, I haven't been seeking anything other than I found a tool to help me feel better, is the way I see it. And at the moment, I'm actually...
someone was seeking you then.
Well, now that I know what I know, my soul, who, like, I'm not necessarily conscious of my soul, it set this up, or the potential for it. The way I see it is it set the potential up, and sometimes the potentials are small and sometimes they're really big. In any case, so my soul set it up. It happened. And 4 years ago, when I was doing a session with the same woman, as we were working our way through talking to this inner child, instead of the inner child becoming happy and going, "Oh, thank you so much for coming back and rescuing me," all of a sudden there was this shift, and the inner child said, "We knew you were going to come back and rescue us. You just didn't know it yet." But it was like this, all of a sudden instead of seeing, I describe it as seeing through the eyes of God, like this overview going, okay, all this stuff is going on at all these levels and layers. And now for the first time, like I said, the inner child said, "Oh, wait a minute, we knew you were going to come back and save us. You just didn't know you were going to come back and save us." And with that change in perception, Kundalini energy opened up, and I've been having what they call a Kundalini awakening for 4 years, which basically means that all of these parts of me that are unhappy and miserable, from not only this life, but other lives, are coming up. And as I heal them, the healing is going multiple levels and layers down. And it's a very intense process and very physically and mentally demanding. And I haven't forgotten your question. So where I see this all going is just, I would like to eventually perhaps go and do some training so that I can work with people and create deep healing for them as a hypnotherapist. Perhaps maybe write a book. There's actually a bit more to my story that I can share too. But one of the challenges with this Kundalini awakening is every time something deep inside becomes healed, so there's a change inside, it's changing my physical DNA, and my body is changing. And so as that change is going on in my body, I'll literally experience some pain in areas while, like, the cells and the structures rearrange. And also, when brain wiring is being rewired, there's a period of, I call it brain fog. And in the beginning, I was purging a lot of very, very deep primal fear and paranoia. So I would have days where every other thought that went through my head was fear. Yet I had this awareness at the same time telling me that's a lie. I'd have a thought of fear or terror, but at the same time, that's a lie. That's just fear. That's not your truth. That's a lie. So it's sort of weird having this double awareness, if you will. Feels a little bit not normal. Well, it's not normal, but for a while I didn't quite feel like a human being for a while, and I'm still sometimes working at that. Yeah.
And that's called the spiritual path. And a lot of people think that every single one of us is going to be on the same path, but Sue's is very individual, like mine is. We're all in this gift of opening up, and each of us need to understand, or I wish for them to understand, it's more the better way, proper way of saying that as we're waking up, don't hold expectations to the outcome. As the outcome comes, the path becomes open to where it's supposed to lead us. And so with that if we were to be like Sue, if she would have known where she was at the beginning of this, she wouldn't understand where she's sitting at now. It's like there's no expectations to where things are going. And so if we can just kind of hold on to today, oh man, Am I hearing something that I didn't expect to hear? Ooh, am I going crazy? Wait a minute. I'm waking up spiritually. There's something out there greater than me that's talking to me. What can I do with it? How can I understand it? Is it talking positively to me, or is it more negative? Because, there's those things that once we become a brighter light, we have negative that comes in just as strong as positive. So being careful of who we let in our door is what's important. And that's one thing that, Sue, I'm grateful for, is that you chose better people to work with you. And that's maybe why when you were on that path of the person that you were going to the hypnosis through that company, that you weren't supposed to do that anymore. So the universe stopped you.
Mm-hmm.
Cut the door, because that wasn't your
I was
spiritual
just gonna-
path. It wasn't leading you to the bigger spiritual path. And so with that, the universe, when we're on a cleaner path of going I don't want to call it the more correct way, but where you're aligned, your soul isn't aligned with your spiritual path, your awakened path, that as we get cleaner into that path, it's amazing how things fall away that aren't going to serve us anymore.
Mhm.
And that's what's so amazing is that we get caught up in, where should I go next? What should I do next? If we just sit back and go, where am I supposed to go next? How did you find these people? Well, sometimes you saw it through conversations with people. Sometimes you would just say, oh, wait a minute, there's a psychic fair. I think I'll go. And then, boom, you hook up with the right people. And one thing I want to say to you, Sue, is what's gift is that you've gotten different perspectives to help your story be well-rounded. You didn't hold on to one person's teachings. And that is the gift, because not one person's teachings are the end all to be all. I didn't just hold on to one person's teachings. I did a lot of studying around to fill in the holes of my intuitiveness. And so with that, and many times, like I always tell somebody that, I just need something awoken in me. I had all the knowledge inside of me. Sometimes I needed to be awoken in this lifetime. And that's some of the story that a lot of us have is that we're waking up this lifetime so that we can be our in more enlightened self. And if we're in that kind of shaky ground of, is this truth or not? If it's rounded with love to help us be a better person, lighter person, more awakened person, because I know Sue's story hasn't always been easy. And spiritual paths aren't meant to be, candy sticks and bubble gum. It's sometimes the bubble gum gets in our hair, and we got to figure out how to get it out. So how can we manage this so that it's our better selves? And when we're working on that, it's that part of that catching our body up. I know that Sue's mind had to do a lot of work to stop stories. Her body had to relinquish some of the stories that it had. Her inner spirit had to relinquish some of the stories it had, because her soul knew how to get there.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things Natasha and I talked about the other day, and what I would like to share, is just when it comes to your path in life, if you're a person who wants to have a spiritual path, that's awesome. And just know that there are a bazillion different paths that you could call spiritual, and they don't necessarily look like going to a monastery or going to an ashram or something that you might consider typically spiritual. I mean, I look at myself as sort of a regular mom. I go to the grocery store, I do this, I do that. I'm homeschooling my son. And yet I have this awareness in my mind and in my body these days that's so different from what I used to be. And to me, that's being spiritual, is just having this different awareness. And I came to it through healing. So Kevin, you were talking with Corey the other day about healing your shit. And
Yeah.
that has been my path to spirituality. It wasn't an intended, I didn't intend to become spiritual. I just wanted to feel better. I just wanted to heal my shit.
And Natasha, for you weren't part of that discussion, but Coriella and I were talking, and we were talking with Sue, and she put a chat through, and it's because I said I want to put that on a t-shirt.
And that, like, if I was going to have a slogan for you want to get spiritual, heal your shit.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfect.
That's all you got to do. And for me, like, I had all this inner talk that was not good. And, some of it was through interactions growing up with a mom who was mentally ill and wasn't medicated until I was like 16. So, that's pretty much my whole formative life. And then I had a brother who had some, I'll just call them miswirings. He didn't really like the wiring to his moral compass wasn't there. And he discovered that he would feel really powerful if he made his sister do things. And so, me being little me going, I want the world to love me. And my mom doesn't love me sometimes because, she tells me horrible things. So maybe my brother will love me. So I would do things that my brother wanted me to do because I thought maybe he would love me if I did them. What I didn't realize is he made me do things because inside he didn't feel powerful. And when he could control something outside of himself, like his sister, it made him feel powerful. And unfortunately, by the time he started becoming like 12, 13, 14, that turned sexual. So little games and stuff he would make me do. I say he made me do them, but I willingly went along because I wanted that approval. It's like being groomed. And so, yeah, things turned ugly. And unfortunately, I became pregnant, and I was terrified to tell anybody because I knew that what was going on was wrong. I felt it inside because I still had a moral compass. He did not. And I was just terrified. I knew stuff was wrong. And when you're a kid and you're doing things that you know are wrong, and somebody is like, if you tell, you're going to get in seriously bad trouble. You don't tell, you clam up. And when my parents found out, like, I was afraid of, this whole getting in trouble, things were going to get really bad and nasty. And of course, the shit hit the fan. So that just, it was not good. Fortunately for me, the timing of everything was such that the last 3 months of my pregnancy, I was able to live in a very private home for unwed mothers. And I was able to go through this experience with nobody that we knew finding out, because my father was terrified that anybody would find out. Like, we're talking back in the late 70s. And it was like a horrendous disgrace. And I was filled with shame upon shame upon shame, terrified. Had my daughter, gave her up for adoption. Everything was hush, hush, secret, secret. Can't say a word of it to anybody. And for years, I wore the label used goods. So that was part of my inner dialogue. It was, I'm too fat and I'm used goods. So basically, I'm a worthless piece of shit. And that was my inner dialogue for decades. No more. Yay. But
You've done a lot of work to get to that point, and I applaud you for doing everything that you've done to make yourself whole and to because that's a pretty horrific thing that you went through.
Thank you for that. I'll take that, and thank you. And one of the things I have to keep in mind is that when people hear that story, immediately they're hit with all kinds of emotions and feelings and this and that. And it can be traumatizing to hear that story. And because I've worked through it, I'm able to talk about it like I just did without becoming enraged. For years, I would become absolutely, well, like I said, first I was used goods. And then in my late 30s, I went to a therapist for the first time. Like I said, an effective therapist. And she was the first person to help me see the whole family dynamic as dysfunctional, to understand that it wasn't my fault. And for the first time in my life, at around age 38, I realized, oh, it wasn't my fault. And I became enraged and started to I wanted to, I wanted to kill my brother. And after years of feeling enraged, you finally realize, wait a minute, this rage is in my body. It's not in his body. It's in my body. And it's doing me harm. And it's not affecting him at all. Like, not at all. And doing the inner work, I was able to address the rage. It took, repeatedly address it, but address it and turn it around, heal it, dissolve it. So now I can think about past events, and those emotional triggers that used to be attached to an event have been dissolved. And the first person I worked with who said, you don't always have to feel this rage. There will be a day you can remember your past, and you won't be immediately triggered into rage. And I didn't believe her. But it's true. Mm-hmm. And I would like to get the training at some point when I have more brain cells back, to help somebody else or several people be able to deal with that, get the trauma out of their system. And there's many different modalities that are wonderful with doing this. And I would, like I said, this one modality I know works wonderfully as well. Mm-hmm. But there are several different ways. And there's several different resources out there for people to use if they're trying to deal with past trauma.
What's your favorite modality for that?
Mine is hypnosis. That's actually the number one modality that I've used. I've heard people talk about one called EMDR, which is something like eye movement desensitization, something or another. And I've heard that's very, very effective. If people want to work with some kind of therapist, somatic therapy talks about, and I don't know, Natasha, if you know about this, but somatic work connects emotions and feelings to your body. It's basically like working to get things out of your physical body, because we store all of our feelings in our bodies.
We do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and this is it's an ongoing thing as well, just in life. I had a frozen shoulder a few years back, and I worked with different people. I worked with a chiropractor who's also an intuitive healer, but I also did a hypnosis session to see what was sort of the root cause of why I couldn't lift my arm up beyond here. And actually I tuned into lifetimes of rage and was able to clear that out. So that was pretty surprising, because a lot of times you're like, oh, this thing hurts and that thing hurts. And it's just, I'm getting old, whatever. It's like, no. You have stored emotions in there that are like blocking your flow of energy. And if you work with someone who's intuitive, or if you can find somebody to help you tap into your own intuitive knowing, you can address that and heal it, and then pain dissolves. It's amazing.
It does. It's kind of like with the summer when I tweaked my ankle, that it just had this energy ball in it. It just wouldn't keep moving. And I checked in with it, and I had this entity attached to it it was almost part of the story of victimhood, of not wanting to move forward. And as soon as I said, wait a minute, we are moving forward. And I talked to that entity of not wanting to move forward. It was a part of me. That inner child, like you were talking, that little corner, the piece that was still left. And she kind of politely grew up and moved forward and moved out, and now it's that movement. But that was the summer's work for me, was a lot of that moving forward, like you were saying, that we all kind of go through these moments where it's like kaboom. And it is walking through. But I want to say good job, Sue, because most of what helped your path was you trusted the path that you were on, that you would be led to something greater, something more, something that was going to be. And that's part of that work, is going through that. Because I know that, like for me, when I decided through my life story of, I always kind of talk about it, it's like you can either stay in the story and go down, or you can kind of get into where it's like, oh, wait a minute, this is the experience. This is what taught me who I am. And you get through the energy of the the emotions of it. And I call that almost, it's like there's a part of us that go through that grief, the story of the grief, and then the experience of the grief. And when we get to that walking part of it, it's that, walkable grief, or the walkable emotion through that thing that happened to you. So I know, Sue, that your story, maybe it wasn't a brother or it wasn't a family member, but it was someone that I can tell you that there's a lot of people out there, men, women, child, whoever, have had that story of being touched wrongly. Because I know I have personally. That I was young. I was around 4 years old, and the neighbor brought me over to his house, and he put me on a table. And the thing that I remember, though, was not the experience, but the brother looking in and shutting the door. So his brother saw what his brother was doing, and he shut the door and walked away. And my dad even said that it took me a week I had to pee through a straw. So I knew that it was something that major happened. I didn't remember until I met my husband, and all of a sudden there was this black cloud over me. So there's things in our lives that pop up because they have to be worked on. And that's the thing that a lot of people just kind of sit at the door of going, I don't want to see you. I don't want to work on you. But yet, like, it may be not easy to work through it, but I can tell you, once you walk through that door of working with it, it becomes almost more of a, wait a minute, that empowered me. That gave me a strength.
Well, I was going to say, when you talk about not easy to work through it, the truth of working in hypnosis is it was easy to work through in a sense, because when you're in hypnosis, your body is completely relaxed. Your mind is totally focused, and you're not re-experiencing. Like, if you want to look at a situation that at the time was traumatic, which is why you've forgotten it, you can look at it without re-experiencing it. You're not re-traumatized. You can look at it at a distance. So when I would do this work, it was actually comfortable, and I wouldn't necessarily know what was going to come up in the session, because I was just chasing down an emotion that I didn't know what was at the root of it. And at the root of it was an interaction that felt painful. But it was actually quite a comfortable way to work. And the last person I worked with, she would literally have me connect to a nondescript, like, white healing light, and ask for somebody to come from that light to go with me. So as I was following these paths and this little story would play out, I had somebody holding the space of really, really big love and safety and security right at my side. So if I ran into a wall of fear, I had somebody there who would it felt like they dealt with it for me. Like, I didn't have to deal with it. I had my posse. And, I don't know, like, who would come forward for other folks. For me, it happened to be a lot of, like, religious figures, which I find hilarious because I'm not religious. But, like, Mother God would come forward, Archangel Michael would come forward, John the Baptist would come forward. And I'm like, I don't even know who John the Baptist was in the Bible, because I never read the Bible, but I know him as this really awesome, cool dude who was my cheerleader.
Yeah. And I know that when we do, because you come to me for your meditations, and we've done some pretty deep work in your meditations. And it's funny how songs always come up for you in our meditations. And that is very signified. It's been funny to watch who comes up for you with last time, if I can share about the frog.
Oh yeah, sure.
That the last time we did a meditation, it was a frog. And at first it hopped up and it was just a frog. And then all of a sudden it turned into this magical, huge being of, of this, he was a healer. And what he was he was a healer from another planet that came in. It was the frog people, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And that it was just magical. And then when he was done doing the magical healing, oh man, it was me being a witness of what was going on. It was magical. And then when he was done doing it, he turned back down into a frog and kind of politely walked it was beside you, wasn't it?
I think so. It was incredible. And I'm glad that you knew about the frog people, because I was just looking at this frog that had grown into person-sized with a big like a cloak and a hood on, and all of a sudden was this wise being, and I just was like, "Oh my goodness." It was amazing.
And that was what's so funny is that I've done meditations with like 3 other people around that time, and frog came in on all 3 of them. Plus dragon. Each one of you got your dragons back again. So with that it's just been amazing to watch how, when we're trusting ourselves enough to undo a layer of who we are. Oh man, it even though it, like you're saying that you've been foggy for the last 2-3 years, that, you've actually now starting to come out of it and clearing up. And that's what happens with us as we kind of go through that opening up. Because I can say the year after my mom and that passed away, and I went through my spiritual, that was my cracking the egg open, and basically becoming me, that when we do that work, if we can even do something physical, like you were saying, you did a chiropractic work, you were in with a hypnosis person, you were doing something physical to help you go through the mental and the emotional. And that's the thing to work on is that remember that as we're going through these emotions, that many a times that when we can do that, if we can hold ourselves to our greater good, and remember being physical is doing spiritual work. Having mental work is part of the spiritual work. Having just that overall fear of who we are is not going to keep us moving forward. It's going to stop us, actually. And we all have something in our lives that we can be totally embarrassed about. Yet at the same time, though, if it wasn't done, it was done to us from someone who manipulated us. It's not for us to stop and say, I did it. It was about somebody else did it. And I'm going to say that the person who did it also, I'm going to flip the coin over to the other side, that we don't have to stay in that moment of what we did in the past. We can become a more enlightened person and say, oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. It's kind of like that story of a gentleman who's going around and sitting with KKK people, and he's giving them their life story, and they're giving them their cloaks. It's the ones that have all these tattoos, and they're going in and getting the tattoos removed because they're not the same people. It's okay to say, I'm different now. Now, does that mean that you'll have forgiveness from the people that you hurt? Well, you may not have forgiveness, but you may be able to move forward with other people because they don't maybe know you as much, and so just give life a chance and push I think I'm going to do things a little different button.
Can I just share quickly, if you've had a situation with another person and you're carrying this pain for however long, first of all, it can always be addressed. It will stay with you until you're ready to address it. And some people actually never do, which is their path, and that's fine.
That's okay. Yes.
But just having a little bit of a brain dropout moment.
That's okay.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, but if we do have those things, because many times when we don't deal with something, like for me, not remembering that I was touched in the wrong way, that there was always this thing about shadow, that I didn't want people to touch me in a certain way. I still have a hard time being kissed, that, or my neck being touched. I don't do certain things because there's this shadow with it. Well, if we don't work with that part of us, we start getting these scenarios around us that we wonder, why can't I be touched? Why don't I have friends in a certain category? Or why can't I get another person to love me? Because we have these shadows that keep cloaked over us, and that's where moving forward can help us through life. But we don't have to. If it's not our life story, we don't have to.
Well, what I was going to say is, I didn't have to have an apology from people that have, what you could say, people that have done me wrong. I never had a true heartfelt apology from them, and I didn't need it, because all I did was address the part of me that was bringing up the feelings. So where some people are like, well, I'm just waiting for them to realize that they did wrong and they were bad. And the truth of it is, in a lot of cases, their perception and their perspective is not going to change. All of healing is changing your own perception. It's changing your own perspective. And you can do this. Like I said, when I worked, the first therapist I ever worked with was just sitting down and talking. She got me to see things from a different angle. And I went, oh my gosh. Yeah. And then
perspective is the key to so many changing of life stories. And, congratulations, Sue. Congratulations. You've done tremendous work that, me being a witness of you, I can only say, here's a huge hug of success, because you've done it. You've done it. And what magic you're going to create. And it's just that, it's, you almost, like for me, I had to wait for your kid to get up and out of the house before you can really become your own path, because of the story that your child has. But at the same time, though, I can see that once that connection of him graduating, that will be your doorway to saying, finally, it's your turn.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I got to get him past high school and through whatever next training, and yeah, it's still, we're not out of the woods yet.
But I feel like that once you start that work, you'll probably find yourself being more grounded.
Ah, cool.
So just trusting that. So with this, we're actually at that 5:08 time. An hour has already wonderfully gone by. And Sue, this has been such a gift. And Kevin, thank you for your questions. Sometimes you feel like you just sit there and you're not part of the story. But I want to say, Kevin, you being there gives this whole platform a groundedness that we need to step forward into the stories and the work. Because sometimes you being a witness of the stories, you ask the right question at the right time to just kind of bring it into that next layer of moving forward. So I just want to say thank you, Kevin, for being here.
Well, you're more than welcome, because this is my gift to you, my friend.
Well, thank you.
This is my gift to you. So there.
Well, this is your gift. It really is. It's awesome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, young lady.
Yeah, he'll hear it from you, but not from me.
Well, it's a new person. You've been saying that for a while. Before I forget, there is a book in your future. I just wanted you to know that. But Natasha's got cards to read.
So I'm just going to pull one card, and this is the card. Trust. Trust that if we can just even trust with our little pinky toe and just move forward with that pinky toe, sometimes that can make the biggest shift in our lives. So trusting that as we walk and as we do trust a little bit more in the better voice, in the more loving voice, in that more loving feeling, in that more, okay, this is not going to be comfortable yet. I can see that it's going to be a sunshine moment later. It's that moving forward. We never know where the path is going to lead. So trust, please, just a little bit more, because you never know where it's going to lead.
It's going to lead somewhere great.
It is. Look at where my path is going, because I trusted. So, Sue, good job. Thank you. And blessings to you on your journey. Your wisdom, I'm praying, can reach the people that are needed to hear this today, because we're all going through something of cracking something open. And many times it is that kind of story that you said today.
Thank you so much for having me, and I very much appreciate it. Awesome.
Love you.
Love you too.
You're more than welcome, and start writing.
Yes.
Oh, actually, I've been writing for years, so I just have to keep it going and one day turn it into a book.
And put it together. She's got a blog that she's had a lot of good stories. 2 blogs. That's right.
Do you publish blogs?
Yeah, they're on WordPress.
Well, how does somebody find your blog if they want to?
Okay, so the first blog I started as a mommy blog that soon turned into a Mommy's Gone Spiritual blog is called Life is a Journey, Not a Guided Tour, and it's on WordPress. And the other blog, which is also on WordPress because they're free, is called Remembering My Divinity. And I started that one a bit later as I was waking up and feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm divine. So hence the name, Remembering My Divinity.
Very good. So go find that blog, because you're already doing the work. Doggone it, you didn't say that earlier. So, yeah.
Well,
Natasha,
they get the Remembering My Divinity blog gets very real, and sometimes it's a little bit more real than people want to read. So a little warning there.
well, that's good. That'll work.
It's called life. And that's the thing, is not enough people are real in their life. And so congratulations that the more real that we are, and not hitting ourselves against the wall because we were feeling something real, like wanting to cry because something hurts or someone hurts us, and we got to say, ouch, that hurt. Why did you have to tell me that way? We can kind of get to a point where we're a little bit more healed. So if you're looking for a session to help yourself through something, or you're wanting some guidance, you can reach me at angelicclarifications.com.
And I can vouch for her. She's awesome.
That is. Say that again, my dear.
angelicclarifications.com.
And you can find a whole bunch of stuff that she's got on My Independence Report, as well as her page, which is Life Connections with Natasha, and all kinds of stuff. So it's you're just grown by leaps and bounds.
I am. And in 2 weeks, I'll be on the radio again with Martha Norwalk. Today, I feel like I've been a pinball machine. I've been what is that? Table tennis?
Ping pong.
Ping pong. I felt like the ping pong. 1 minute I'm talking to my principals at the school, and the next minute I'm talking to someone to fix my Zoom, and now I'm here. So it's like, where am I supposed to be?
And now
I'm
you're
here.
Dinner. Which is
well,
great.
Actually, I texted my husband and said, honey, I think tonight's Mexican, because he kind of heard me talking to my principals today. And so I think he doesn't have any expectations tonight for me.
He's coming with quesadilla in tow.
Hopefully. Okay. Well, blessings to everyone. And please know that I love how Sue said this. This is a journey in life. And we really don't know our destination, but yet it is the journey. So take a look around and see what the journey is trying to show you, because you never know where life is going to lead you when you start looking.
It is the journey. That's the fun part.
Mm-hmm.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye. Blessings. Bye.
Hey, and thanks for listening to this episode all the way to the end. Hey, pretty cool. Hey, don't forget to follow us so you can receive regular updates and new posts. And remember, take care of each other because each other's all we've got. See you next time on My Independent Truth.